and thank you for taking the time and joining this virtual forum, which highlights some circular businesses models in the Philippines and in the Netherlands. Together with the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands and the Philippines and our forum partners, the American Chamber of Commerce, Dutch Chamber of Commerce, and the Nordic Chamber of Commerce, we welcome you to our second session in our Circular Economy Forum series. The Circular Economy program of MBC and the Dutch Embassy aims to inspire corporate action and public-private partnerships as the Philippines transition to a circular economy. The program started last August, and for the past months, we've reached out to different key stakeholders, such as businesses, local governments, and waste management enterprises, to find possible areas for collaboration to achieve plastic neutrality. On the policy side, we have conducted roundtable discussions, initiated consultations, and engaged in conversations about the new EPR law as we aim to share the insights of businesses and work towards a more participative and collaborative means of policymaking. This virtual forum is one of the initiatives of the program, and last November 8th, we held our first session on the Extended Producers Responsibility Act of 2022 and its impact on businesses. Next year, we are looking to bring together businesses and LGUs for a plastic waste management project, either to initiate new programs or help them scale up their existing initiatives. To officially start this program, I would like to invite Francisco Alcuaz Jr., Executive Director of the Makati Business Club, for his welcome remarks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Coco.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Before we formally begin, I'd like to acknowledge the presence and support from the Dutch Embassy. Thank you to our co-organizers, AmCham, DCCP, and NordCham, represented today by Mitchell Smolders, the Executive Director of DCCP, Jesper Svegensen, the Executive Director of NordCham, and Eb Hinchcliffe, the Executive Director of AmCham. And to everyone, our attendees here on Zoom and on Facebook, thank you for joining us in our second virtual forum on circular business models. As Kendrick said, this is the second session of our Circular Economy series. When we held the first one, COP27, COP27 was just starting, and now it's over with little progress on most of the key areas, but an historic agreement on a loss and damage fund. The fund would compensate vulnerable poor countries, such as ourselves, when they are hit by climate disasters that rich countries contribute to. It's taken 30 years to get to a loss and damage fund, an agreement at least, and the mechanics still have to be worked out. I see this as a metaphor for the tenacity we all need and the never-ending work we have to do. In the Philippines, these are highlighted by the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000, the Clean Air Act of 2004, the Green Jobs Act of 2016, and most recently, the Extended Producer Responsibility or EPR Act of 2022. Less well-known are the efforts that individual companies do to implement these laws and in some cases go further. This series is about learning how other companies are advancing EPR so that we all can do better. Our focus today is on businesses' waste management practices. This is an important subject for the Philippines because we are one of the world's biggest contributors to plastic waste, thanks to our sachet economy. It's therefore an area where we have actual responsibility and impact and the chance to be a world leader. We hope this project is a step toward that leadership. Again, a warm welcome to each and every one of you. And once again, thank you for being here. Back to you, Ken.
Maraming salamat, Coco, for mentioning the role that we have to play as obliged enterprises and companies, and how we as individuals can be part of it. This is a perfect opportunity for us to learn on how we can transition. Okay, so can you share the slide? Thank you. So are you now, and we are now introducing MBC's Circular Economy Pledge. If you are a business who would like to partner with LGUs and other key stakeholders for your EPR programs, MBC is here to assist you with resources, information, and opportunities for collaboration. For more details, kindly visit the link shown on your screens and sent in the Zoom chat box. To start off our series of talks, our first speaker, Dr. Hans Breukelman, is the Managing Director of the consulting firm Breukelman. Most of his 40-year career has been dedicated to research consultancy, business development, and management of companies in the field of circular economy, solid waste management, and renewable energy. He is currently preparing to support the Public-Private Partnership, or PPP Center, for a solid waste management project in the island province of Catanduanes. Outside of work, he enjoys sailing and photography during his travels. Hans, the room is yours.
Okay, thank you. I will try to share my screen.
Okay, let's see. Okay, your screen is okay.
Yes, my screen. You have my screen, and I will. So now you see
Okay,
the main
perfect.
screen, I hope.
Yes, Hans.
Okay, thank you. Well, my name is Hans Breukelman from the Netherlands. I want to thank you for the wonderful Christmas music in your introduction. So it gets us really in the mood. I only have 7 minutes, I was told, so my introduction will be very concise. It's about general experiences of the Netherlands on waste management and circular economy. So that's one part, and the other part is the experiences of Dutch waste management companies abroad. It comes with a working title, the Orange Clockwork. Orange is our national color, and the clockwork is about cooperation, about many players within a team going for one goal. So maybe first some background on the Netherlands. We are a very small country, only 14% of the Philippines. Population on about 16% of the Philippines, but we do very bad on waste production, as you see, because we produce something like 50% of the waste that is the volume of the waste that is produced in the Philippines. Maybe another characteristic is that 95% of our population lives in urban areas, whereas I was told in the Philippines this is about 60%, so big differences. And all of these people, these 17.5 million people, live in a very small part of the Netherlands. So 85% of the country is covered with agriculture and nature, and the remaining 15% is for living and for our industry. So it's a very confined area that we have to do it, and that makes waste management very important. But maybe what's even more pressing is that 55% of our country is on or below sea level. And that means that for centuries, we had to fight the water together. It is not a one-man job. You have to do that in very close cooperation with everyone in this field. So that kind of shaped our country, that fight against water, and some even say it shaped our democracy and society as a whole. We, as a very small country, have to collaborate. And you could say, well, a PPP, a public-private partnership, is everywhere to be found. We even call it a quadruple helix, because it's not only about private businesses and the public authorities, but it's also about the academia, and it's also about the public in general that have to cooperate. So the quadruple helix, and you see that everywhere in the Netherlands, not only for fighting the water through water management, but also on chemistry, food agriculture, logistics, and high tech. But back to waste management, is waste management also something like this quadruple helix or a clockwork? And the answer is, of course, yes, because waste management is about a needed utility with many actors working very closely together within a defined space, energized from outside to deliver results and to move ahead. So indeed, it is a PPP as a whole, our society. So this quadruple helix I already talked about, somewhere at the center of waste management in this subject of waste management is the municipalities. In the Netherlands, we have more than 300 individual and independently run municipalities that do the collection, but also have to cooperate a lot. So, and that's what brings back this cooperation side, because a municipality cannot do it on itself. Sometimes even the scale of the province is too low, and sometimes even the national scale of the Netherlands is too small for waste management. So we have to cooperate a lot. Most of that is done voluntarily, but sometimes you need laws and regulations and policies to enforce some kind of cooperation. We started with that some 40 years ago on waste management, and it made the Netherlands something like a front runner in laws and incentives and regulations and policies on waste management, and nowadays also on circular economy. And that endeavor of 40 years paid off. In the Netherlands, we have 61% of all our municipal waste recycled. 36% of it is incinerated with energy recovery, and Luuk will tell you more about that. And only 3% of the municipal waste is landfilled, only 3%. One thing that we found out is that there is a very close relation between, let's say, the financial side and waste management and circularity as a whole. Here you see a plot of the average fee a household pays in the Netherlands. An average household nowadays pays almost 300 euros per year. But 40 years ago, that was something like 30 or 40 euros. So a steep increase. And that steep increase was partly the result of many recycling and waste management activities, but it also helped to reduce the volume of waste. Because, as you know, finances are one of the main incentives to reduce waste. So here you see the decline in the tons landfilled. You see in the blue line the tons incinerated, going up from something like 2.5 million tons in 1985 to 7.7 million tons nowadays. Green is the volume treated by composting and by digestion of organic waste, and of course a lot of other recycling initiatives. One of the most important is the enormous amount of construction and demolition waste that is recycled. It's almost 100% of it, and it's 24 million tons per year. So that's 2 times the volume of municipal waste. But also on the industrial waste side, 13 million tons, 96% of that is being recycled nowadays. We learned a lot of lessons in the Netherlands through these 40 years and paid a high price for it. But anyway, we learned. So one of the main lessons we learned is there is no waste management without laws, regulations, and incentives. And you can see that in the Netherlands, but you can see that in any country around the world. So, and that puts the national government, let's say, in a very important position. Municipalities are the anchors and the linking pins in our waste management systems. There is no hardware, no recycling, and no progress without companies. And also these companies become the service providers of the systems in the PPP. And the last one, the public, maybe the most important, it must be enabled, the people must be enabled, educated, but also enforced to line up with the system. And if they do, rewarded for it. So those are the 4 most important lessons that we learned. Shifting a bit to our experiences abroad, Well, maybe first, when we look back at our history in waste management, and it is the same in many other countries around the world, it often starts off with city cleaning and collection. Then the interest rises in doing something with the waste on a sanitary landfill and composting. Next stage is often more recycling and introduction of waste to energy. And the end stage is what we call and aim at the circular economy. So this is the axis of time. And you see this stage, most of it is centered around health subjects at the local level. Then the second stage is more on environment at the regional level, about resources on the national level, and overall sustainability at the global level. So with this axis of time, you see during this development, populations grow, waste volumes grow, cities grow, and also traffic intensities go up. But if we replace the axis, the lens of time by the lens of money, and I've done so for the situation in Asia, you could say, well, let's take GDP as the axis here. And then you see that, let's say, the poorest countries are still working mostly on city cleaning and collection, getting the waste outside of the cities, whereas more developed countries are already going into sanitary landfills and composting, and some of them also already in waste to energy and more complex forms of recycling. And maybe for the most developed countries, the circular economy concepts are also gaining importance. So our lessons learned from the companies that went abroad from the Netherlands to other countries to export products and services and do consultancies, etc. We have a number of lessons learned too. It starts with cities. Cities are at the central point, the focal point, should be the focal point of any strategy on waste management. Because also, and that is especially true for, let's say, cities close to the sea or countries close to the sea, like the Netherlands, but maybe even more important, the Philippines. Clean cities means clean seas. A third lesson, take care of the solid waste management backbone. So you can do a lot of things on recycling maybe, but it's also very, very important to concentrate on the backbone of waste collection, city cleaning, waste transfer, transport, and landfills in combination with composting. Everywhere you go, you should balance technology and labor. Every country is different in that regard. Financials are key. If the finances are not taken care of, then there is no waste management. And in order to arrange these finances, arranging governance and political support is also a top priority. Seventh lesson learned is focus on total cost of ownership, not on initial investments, because if you invest in a truck, waste management truck, a collection truck, or in a landfill site, or in a composting facility, those investments have to endure a period of, let's say, 10 or 20 years. And in the end, it counts what the overall cost, the total cost of ownership is of such a facility or such an investment. But also the good news is, for every country in the world, it is overall affordable and doable. Waste management is not very expensive. And you only have to do the job. There is technology finances can be arranged and it is doable. And maybe the last lesson is just keep an close eye on the gate fees. The gate fees that are used at landfills, waste-to-energy facilities, etc., because they can really fire up recycling. High gate fees at landfill is probably the most effective way to incentivize recycling. So maybe a closer look at the companies in the Netherlands. For this, I'm rolling out the value chain. You see here, of course, it all starts with prevention, preventing waste to go into the value chain. But if it does, then cleaning, collection, logistics, recycling, recovery, and disposal are, let's say, the backbone of any waste management system. And if we place this value chain and place the Dutch companies around it, so there is something like 50 companies and Dutch institutions that are active abroad in almost every country in the world. On the left-hand side, you see the companies and institutions like the Wageningen University, FB Basic, and the Holland Circular Hotspot, active in the field of preventing waste to arise. We have a number of companies like Sitcon and Breukelman that are concentrating on the city cleaning side with very smart waste containers connected to transport, connected to the authorities. We have a number of companies active in the field of waste collection and logistics, containers, hydraulics, etc. A large group of companies in the field of recycling, of waste tires, organics, plastics, well, you name it, anything that you can think of. On the recovery side, we have harvest waste from Luuk. Luuk will talk about it, but also the Blue Phoenix Group, who's taking care of the residuals of any incineration plant. And then on the disposal side, we have a number of companies active in the field of sanitary landfilling, methane gas emissions, and taking care of that. And of course, many institutions, consultancy bureaus taking care of advice and studies on technology, but also on governance and organization and on finances. Of course, you can also plot these same institutions and companies along the line of development, with here the companies in the first part of the value chain, and so up the development chain. The Dutch value propositions, we cover the entire value chain with all the companies that are active in this field. We concentrate on total cost of ownership, not so much on, let's say, cheapest investments, but the total cost of ownership. Almost all these companies work with breakthrough innovations like smart technologies connecting city cleaning, collection, transport and treatment together, and compliance to the highest standards of regulations, mainly those from the EU. So lessons learned there also, or some advices you could say, there is no leapfrogging. You cannot jump from, let's say, almost no waste management to a full circular economy. You have to go through all these stages together. It's hard work and joint efforts, so no one can do it alone. We need the government, we need the private partners, we need the public, and we need the academia. Solutions have to be tailored per country, and coalitions have to be customized. So there is no one silver bullet. There is no simple solution for every situation. We focus on quality, proven technology, and total cost of ownership, as said. And we want to add knowledge and long-term cooperation to where we work. So that's my introduction. I hope I am within the 7 minutes. the main message, a collaborative approach to waste management and circular economy is the most important thing. Thank you.
Okay, maraming salamat, Hans. So I just like to highlight two things. Thank you for highlighting that solid waste management incurs fees, and the stage for the sanitary landfill stage, it is important that municipalities should be open for PPP or public-private partnership. And going to our next speaker, he is the regional manager for harvest waste in Asia and the Pacific, working closely with local governments and local partners, including those in the Philippines. Their programs focus on waste-to-energy projects as part of aiding the transition to a circular economy. He has extensive knowledge of the ASEAN business context as he previously worked for the Netherlands of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Outside of work, he loves long-distance biking, and he is also part of the 7-Eleven executive cycling team with our very own JV Paterno. Let us welcome Mr. Luuk Rietvelt.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I hope you can see my presentation. I live here in the Philippines, in Manila, already since 2015 with a lot of pleasure. I'm happy to be able to present to you today our experience in the Netherlands, in particular on turning whatever waste is residual into as much electricity as possible. So the recovery part that Hans already touched upon. I represent a company called Harvest Waste. We are a spin-out of the public waste management company of the city of Amsterdam, where we are operating a 4,000 ton per day waste energy plant. And the particular technology that we bring to the rest of the world and also to the Philippines is the so-called high efficiency technology. And that waste to energy plant is still known as the most efficient large-scale waste incineration plant in the world. And it also achieves very low emissions, but I'll touch upon that later. What I first want to talk with you about is the problem of methane. What you see here on this slide, especially on the left picture, that's methane bubbling out of a landfill. Is a picture or a video that I shot myself when I was in a landfill in Pakistan. But I can tell you that I've also been to several landfills on your beautiful islands, and they're not the nicest places on earth to be. Methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. It's 25 times more potent than CO2, and it develops when untreated organic waste decomposes from mainly untreated, unmanaged landfills and open dumps. Dutch researchers have recently shown that methane is leaking out of landfills globally two times faster than we previously expected. And the problem is that you cannot see or smell methane, but it produces around 11% of all methane emissions in the world. So it's a relatively low-hanging fruit in our fight against climate change. Methane coming out of landfills is expected to increase by 70%, and add to that the world is expected to produce 70% more waste by 2050. You can see the extent of the problem. The Philippines, unfortunately, still dumps most of its waste. There are some sanitary landfill sites where they try to do some daily coverage of the residual waste, but it doesn't help a lot from what I've seen, and it's not always executed in the proper way. You have signed on to the Paris Treaty and the Methane Pact, so it's for the country it's important in order to achieve and its national determined contributions to reduce methane emissions. And from waste management, in combination with your island nature, the interest to attract tourists, waste management should be done properly. Now, what can we do? Because we need to act now. Well, the solution seems simple, right? Just take out the organics from the waste, and no methane will create, so we can solve this greenhouse gas problem. In theory, yes, that seems very simple. The practice is unfortunately different. Depending on where you live, I live in a condominium here in Metro Manila, and we just have one garbage chute. We have no opportunity for source segregation. And I think I've seen in many of the streets and when I go around on my bike in the provinces, I see that waste is collected mixed. So organics with potential residuals, but also with all the other waste. Recycling is happening. I don't think you'll find a lot of PET bottles or good cardboard or glass bottles or metals on most landfills. But whatever is residual, that is creating a problem, and that ends up on your landfills. Taking out the organics from that is a costly process. So it requires money from the government to be done properly. Who's going to pay for that? If you want to take out whatever is residual and recyclable, you need to also charge gate fees. You need to put machines into place, and you need a market for the offtake of the residuals, because otherwise you're just recycling for the recycling. Who's going to do that? If there's no business case, it's not going to work. And taking out organics to compost from mixed waste is in the EU not allowed, because unfortunately I've seen in many monsters and laboratory tests of previously mixed waste that is turned into compost, that it's either heavily polluted via heavy metals. Lots of people throw batteries or other chemicals in their mixed waste, and microplastics. So what we often see in countries where waste is not collected, source segregated, that whatever garbage goes in, garbage comes out, and you cannot do something with it anymore. So what can we then do? Hans already touched upon a few of the items that in the Netherlands we've done, and also the Asian Development Bank, which is headquartered here in Ortigas, has a few steps on how to reach a more circular economy. And the first step is getting away from landfills and first turning the whatever is residual and would end up on a landfill now into energy in the most efficient way possible. Recovery of bottom and fly ash should be done, and then from there on you can add sorting and recycling and go further up the value chain to improve hopefully your collection and local recycling. Our company is a spin-out, as I mentioned, of the public waste management company, and similar to what Hans showed you. The Netherlands was not doing well in the 1960s to 1970s, and Hans mentioned 40 years of working on the more circular economy in the Netherlands. In the early 90s, we really started doing source segregated collection. We implemented more waste energy projects. We increased recycling rates, and we went from you see the picture Amsterdam in 1965, where people just dumped their waste in the canals, to an Amsterdam where the Queen can swim in the canals because of the combined efforts of the public, the private, and the people to get it for a cleaner society. Well, our waste in Amsterdam, we've been doing waste to energy already since 1917, and our latest generation, the high efficiency plant, is so efficient that we can actually reduce the cost of waste management for the people of Amsterdam through it. And we believe that with that technology that we bring, we can make waste to energy competitive to landfilling also in countries like the Philippines. But it requires, as Hans also mentioned, government action. And Hans mentioned a few things already. First, you have to create awareness, implement landfill bans on recyclable and compostable material, introduce landfill taxes, EPR schemes, as you've discussed previously. If possible, source segregated collection. If not, post collection segregation. What is very important is strict emission standards, and now you have the Clean Air Act here, but that is still based on quite old US EPA regulation from the early 1990s. The EU is already a step further with their latest 2019 emission regulation, and they are far stricter than the Philippine standards. Implement waste energy plans based on best available technologies, such as our plant, will also really help. And one key item, and that's also what we learned in the Netherlands, you do not have to build a lot of waste to energy capacity. Do not build more than 50% of the current waste generation capacity, because as you've learned from Hans, you can at this moment already recycle about 60% of all your waste. in a quite feasible way. So you don't have to incinerate all, but at this moment, it's still not technically and economically feasible to recycle everything. So what was the combined results of that in the Netherlands on greenhouse gas emissions? Because that's what I wanted to talk with you about. Well, in the Netherlands, we managed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by almost 80% through a combination of all these efforts that Hans and I tried to mention. And it's work that the public, the private sector did together. Closing landfills, introducing waste energy, introducing recycling, and all kinds of other things. So this is also possible in countries like the Philippines. So our waste to energy solution is, as I mentioned, still regarded as the most efficient in the world. What we want to do is turn whatever ends up on whichever landfill, whether it's Navotas, Montalban, Clark, the ones in Cebu, or on the beautiful island of Bohol, where I've also been, into energy. It's baseload power. We reduce a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, CO2 equivalent. So let's say a small waste energy plant that treats about 700, 800 tons per day. And just for reference, Metro Manila alone produces 10,000 tons, if not more, of waste on a daily basis. We can save around 170 to 190 kilotons of CO2 equivalent on an annual basis, which is equivalent to European cars of 100,000 driving 15,000 kilometers per year. And that's just with an 800 ton per day plant. So we avoid methane emissions, we generate baseload power, we create stable jobs, we avoid the need for more landfilling, we avoid the leakage of waste into oceans, water bodies, and the likes. And we work towards a first step towards a clean clean society and a circular economy. So this is what we bring along. Our technology was developed with Dutch taxpayers' money. We as a company bring this abroad, also here to the Philippines, but also we're developing in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in Pakistan, in India, in Egypt and Nigeria, and we're also looking at Brazil. We think that in the Philippines, it's also very feasible. And we'd like to bring this technology with the strict European emission standards to the Philippines to really start the circular economy here. Open to any question that you may have after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. I thank you, Luuk, for the insights that you shared for waste to energy. So I think with the use of efficient technology and following strict standards of emission, waste to energy is a viable option in transitioning to a circular economy model. Okay, for our third and last speaker, he is the Managing Director of Alaska Milk Corporation, and he has been with Friesland Campina since 2010, where he has spent time in Singapore, Nigeria, Malaysia, and just last year, the Philippines. With 19 years of experience in the FMCG sector, he has built expertise in driving business growth and building high-performance teams. Outside of work, Tarang enjoys traveling, boxing, and family time with his wife and daughter. Tarang, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Felix. And good morning and good afternoon if there's somebody's dialed in from the Netherlands. In fact, Hans and Luuk gave us a lot more of insights and actually taking up from a country level point of view. What I like to do is I like to share with you some stuff that we as Alaska are doing. But before that, I guess all my Filipino friends would know Alaska well, and probably quite a few have grown up with Alaska. But Alaska and Friesland Campina. So I was introduced to a part of Friesland Campina group. Friesland Campina is one of the world's largest dairy cooperative, and it is based out of Netherlands. Friesland Campina had acquired Alaska in 2012. So it's been part of the group, the global group, since 2012. So I thought I'll give you that perspective. But hey, this is all about Alaska, and this is all about what are we doing. So what you see here is the Alaska Likasan, and that's a little bit of a word play. And if you take me to the next slide, let me just try giving you a little bit of more of a perspective of what are we trying to do, because what we believe as Friesland Campina and Alaska is that we make an impact end to end and glass to glass. And let me try explaining that in a different perspective. If you look at the extreme right, where we say dairy training and development program, that's a very, very important program for us, that we are trying to help the local dairy industry to increase their productivity, economics, but also quality of local fresh milk. As Dutch expertise, we can bring that in. But then if you go to the extreme left, which is Alaska Lusugan, which is all about nutrition, and that's what we bring in. There is a challenge of malnutrition in the country, and we as a dairy company and a global dairy company can play a role. And in between is what is Alaska Likasan, which is all about, and if you can take me to the next slide, please, thank you. It is about taking care of the nature. Now, I want to pause here for a moment because I think it was very well explained by Hans and Luuk. But each one of us as consumers, we know the amount of sachets are produced in Malaysia. Oh, sorry, in Philippines. Now, why is that? That's because it's directly also linked with the economy of the country. Now, do we have an alternative to this, what we call as multi-layered packaging? There are alternatives that are coming up, but from an economics point of view, they are not viable. At this moment of time, the scale and the viability is just not there. So we, in the beginning of the year or towards the end of last year, we said that we would like to really take a step up and say, can we become net zero plastic? Now, which means, while before we go into circularity, can we start getting and moving it out of the landfill? And this, of course, from an SDG point of view, plays a big role, but we have our job as Alaska to contribute to it. So Felix, if you can move to the next slide. Thank you. So we've been talking about public-private partnership. We've been talking about partnership with the government, and I'm very happy to say that 5 local government units and extensively partnering with them, and you see the names up here. We actually partnered with them to collect 445 metric tons. But what's important here is that also how did we collect? So while the local government units in Alaska, we started partnership in collecting, but we started incentivizing the people who were collecting, the households, communities, with free milk. So we said that one, we save the planet, or we help the planet in a way which is nourishing the planet, but we also give milk in free so that we can nourish Filipinos. And that program has actually taken off very well, and we want to expand this to multiple LGUs to start creating that collection. What we realize is that there is, in the government units, there is infrastructure, there is most of the LGUs do have the intent to do it, and they are doing it. But to the point that Hans made, that industry needs to become part of it. And that's what we did, so that we can start collecting this plastic. Now, what next? So while we are recycling and we are collecting it back and avoiding from landfill, what we are doing as a next step is, and Felix, if you can flip to the next one, is now we have partnered with DNG Pacific, and we are bringing in one of the state-of-the-art machinery, and we've signed an MOU, which is going to turn this plastic into something more called as paper boards, as well as, boards for schools, as well as probably bricks. And that's the investment that we are making, so that we are able to, and this facility will be ready by the December 15th of this year, and we would be able to then start using this to make the collection that is coming from the LGUs, turning it into something more valuable and giving it back to the community. Now, why I want to pause up here for a moment is that, like we say, Rome was not built in a day, but to the point that Hans and Luuk also said, that we cannot leapfrog. With sachets, can we get rid of sachets and multi-layered packaging? Not in the near future. Can we create an immediate circularity like the way we do create with some of our other materials? Maybe not. But then can we create a circularity within an ecosystem? And that's what we are doing. Pull out the waste, put it back into something used, and bring it back into the system that it adds value, and that cycle continues. What I'm really happy and proud to say is that something that we started as a very, very audacious, and Felix, if you can click to the next one, audacious goal, we have said that we have been declared as net zero plastic brand by the end of this year. Already now we are net zero plastic. and we would like to go plastic negative within in 2023. We are pulling out more than we are putting in, but more importantly, this is not about, and this has been audited by PricewaterhouseCoopers and the certificate being given by Plastic Credit Exchange. But more importantly is that how do we create an ecosystem, and we would welcome more and more partnership into this journey for us to keep growing, because this is not just about Alaska, but this is about taking care of our planet, but also Philippines. I have a short video, probably it's in the next slide, maybe a short video, and then I'll close it off. Thank you.
With the goal of nourishing a better planet, Alaska Milk Corporation launched its Wrapper Redemption Program under Alaska Lee Casson, the company's corporate purpose responsibility initiative, which is geared towards environmental sustainability. Wrapper Redemption is one of the 3 main programs under this initiative to recover and upcycle the total plastics generated by AMC in 2021. With extensive efforts and strategic partnerships, AMC has recovered 872 metric tons, or the 100% of its used plastics. Thus, being certified as Net Zero Plastic Waste Brand by Plastic Credit Exchange and becoming the first ever Friesland Campina OPCO to be plastic neutral.
Net Zero Plastic Waste Brand, Alaska Milk Corporation, Plastic Credit Exchange certifies that Alaska Milk Corporation has fully complied with the requirements of net zero plastic waste as specified under the Plastic Pollution Reduction Standard. Alaska Milk Corporation is hereby awarded the status of Net Zero Plastic Waste Brand for its first year of certification.
And with the recent passing of the Extended Producer's Responsibility Law of 2022, which mandates all obliged enterprises to collect and recycle an equivalent percentage of plastics it generated in the market, this saved AMC from paying the penalty for non-compliance with a maximum amount of 20 million pesos, or almost 339,000 euros. As a company of purpose, this only proves that Alaska Milk does not only provide accessible and affordable nutrition for every Filipino, but also strives to make our planet a better place to live in.
I'll just like to conclude with one thing. It's extremely important, because whenever we start talking about now, and you can skip those slides, that's okay. It's extremely important to create that partnership, but more importantly, also to run through economics. And we are evaluating that these boards that we're going to create, how do we continue and support the ecosystem? Can we go to the schools that are impoverished and help them? It's more and more important for us as industries and as companies to continuously influence the ecosystem and create something that has value for the planet, value for the people, but also value for the business. And that's our journey. Thank you very much.
Okay, maraming salamat Tarang for showcasing that it is doable to have a net zero plastic in different companies. So again, congratulations on your recent certification of being a net zero plastic waste brand ahead of the February 2023 EPR registration. So in the interest of time, we are trying to narrow down the panel discussion. But before we welcome our speakers back to the panel, we will send out 3 poll questions on our screens. So be sure to scroll down to see the 3rd question. So we have 3 questions. The first one is, does your company have existing partnerships for waste management with LGUs or government agencies? Number 2, what are the hurdles in implementing your circular or waste management programs? And the options are either technology, funding, location, partnerships, regulations, and policies, and others. And number 3, which partners are you looking for to implement your waste management programs or your EPR programs? The options are LGUs, waste enterprises, national government agencies, business organizations, youth organizations, and others. Okay, so while you are answering, we would like again to acknowledge the support of the Dutch Embassy, the AmCham, NordCham, and DCCP for making this event possible. And we'll be ending the poll in a while. Okay, last 3 seconds for the poll. Okay, end poll now. So for the answers, can you flash it quickly? Okay, from my end, for the question number 1, most 67% of the participants have existing partnerships for waste management with LGUs and government agencies. For number 2, the hurdles that are incurred for the most is technology and funding. Then number 3, which partners are you looking to for implementing your waste management? So the top is waste enterprises, followed by business organizations. Okay, so I'll stop this one and then let's proceed with the panel discussion. So to start, I would like to invite Hans, Luuk, and Tarang back to the Zoom screen. So for our opening question, for the first one, what component of the circular economy value chain or waste management process excites you the most? Anyone can go first. Again, what component of the circular economy value chain or waste management process excites you the most? Who would like to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, I've said, of course, that that I think for a lot of countries in Asia, let me generalize it, for a lot of countries in Asia where the recycling industry is happening on an informal level, I see it at the back of the collection trucks. That's a part which is difficult to touch by a government, but where you can really make an impact. And again, methane emissions from landfills, where that whatever is residual ends up, that can best be thought by a combination of maybe some recycling, but that's, you know, how efficient that is a big is highly doubtful. So for me, a proper what we would call sink solution, a proper way of disposal, so that you can recover whatever is left in that residual waste and properly treat it such that the methane emissions are reduced. That is, I think, a great starting point, and which aligns exactly with what the Asian Development Bank is advising the Philippines, but also Vietnam, Indonesia, and all the other countries that it's helping, because that's where you see that value can be created. So for me, it's the end of the line, but that doesn't mean that we have to discount any of the recycling initiatives, trying to compost organic waste. That is all good and well. We do the same in Amsterdam, but in Europe, in Amsterdam, we still see that at this point, given the way how we collect our waste, how we package our food, and how we discard our waste, also ourselves, just look at yourself, how you dispose of your waste at home. That a good solution for that at the end is really required. So yeah, so good disposal.
Okay, thank you, Luuk, for the end of the line, good disposal. How about you, Hans?
Yes, well, I'm mostly very enthusiastic about two aspects of this value chain. And one is on, let's say, not so much recycling, but the collection itself. So in many developing countries, well, the focus is mostly on what happens in the cities. And cities are taken care of more or less with waste management, but we tend to forget about the rural areas. Well, I always underline that there's quite an importance in also giving access of the rural areas to waste, some form of waste collection, because studies show that, of course, if you look at cities, if waste is not collected, it ends up in the sea. But most of the waste, and especially also plastics that ends up in the rural areas, ends up in the sea. So it's quite an enormous contribution to marine plastics, what happens in the rural areas. And the same holds for organics. So the other part is organics. It's something like 50 to 60% of all the waste. If we want to do something seriously about waste management, and I don't want to minimize the effect of plastics, of course, but organics with 50 to 60% is extremely important, both on a, let's say, on a volume-based approach, but also on a methane-based approach. So anything you can do with reducing the amount of organic waste going to landfills is of enormous importance, either by composting or digestion, or if not possible, by just running it through the waste to energy plants. So those two aspects are my first areas of interest.
Okay, thank you, Hans. It's a good thing that in the EPR law of the Philippines, there is a safeguard that EPR programs should reach rural areas and remote islands. Tarang, over to you.
To me, I'm a very simple. What I've experienced in the last 5 to 7 years in Malaysia, now in Philippines, also in Nigeria, we can turn waste into value. I think that excites me. And there are different ways, and there is no one size that fits all. But the moment you're able to turn waste into value, it starts making business economics, and it's good for the planet. So that's, I think, the attitude that we as leaders, but also as an industry, need to take. Is it's not something that we have to do, but we want to do because there is a business economics to it, and then it becomes a win-win situation. So how do we work around that is what excites me. And that's a question that I keep asking also my team. So guys, how can we turn more and more into value, both for the business, for the people, but also for the planet?
Okay, thank you, Tarang, for sharing those three concepts for your business model. And just to go, before we go to the next question, I'll just read the comment of a participant in the Zoom. So, Sir Brian Jelly from San Juan City. This is a project. San Juan City with Greenpeace and Impact Hub Manila launched the Kuha sa Tingi. This is a project that provides livelihood program to sari-sari store owners with refill of shampoo, dishwashing liquid, liquid detergent, and fabric conditioner. This also encouraged people to stop buying plastic and sachets and reuse their empty bottles and containers. To top it off, the products are priced way lower than commercial products. I think with San Juan, you have the same business model with Alaska, wherein they incentivize collectors and donators of plastics with their own products. Thank you, Sir Brian. So for our next question, anyone can answer. How does obliged enterprises or companies cater to the social aspect of sustainability initiatives? Case in point is that the informal waste collector sectors don't meet the labor standards. Again, how do obliged enterprises cater to the social aspect of sustainability initiatives? Case in point that the informal waste collectors don't meet the labor standards. Who wants to answer first?
I can take that. I think that's a real challenge. That's a real challenge because if you start taking organizations like us, large multinationals, we want to end-to-end. When we say extended producer responsibility, we also have extended human rights responsibility in the end-to-end of a chain. So any chain that we partner with in the value chain needs to follow through human rights and cannot be violating any of the human rights. So what we have what we've noticed is there are pockets where some of these human rights are not followed. And that's something that we work with the LGUs, but the ones that we have partnered with, we do not have that challenge because I think it meets the thresholds. But yes, the informal sector could be having human rights violations. And that's where we need the support from the government to make it more and more structured.
Okay, thank you, Tara. How about Luuk and Hans?
Yes, from my side, I worked in almost all the continents of the world in developing countries, and everywhere it's the same, you could say, problem with the informal sector. My experience is that no one working in the informal sector is doing so by choice. It is one of the last resorts of a job they can do and earn some money for their living, but it's not the best type of job. So any policy on waste management should keep a close eye on that. And in my opinion, the first objective should be that if you grow your environmental business, if you grow your waste management business, there are going to be a lot of jobs in that business. And so there should be always a program of shifting the informal workers to formal jobs, which is much better than, let's say, just safeguarding the position of the informal workers as they are. So I think, in my opinion, we should get away from that. Nobody does it by choice. we should give them alternatives, let's say, in the formal sector.
Okay, thank you, Hans. How about you, Luuk?
Yeah, well, I completely agree from this perspective with what Tarang and Hans have said. I've been on quite a few landfills, and they're not the nicest places on earth. People indeed often do not work there for, because they do it by choice. However, some people we have spoken to during our environmental impact assessment, they actually made the choice. They do not want to be formalized because they love the freedom that they have. So we do have to listen to these people. We cannot just all take them off the landfill or wherever they work in their informal sector and say, oh, now you're going to stand at, let's say, for instance, on a conveyor belt, and you're going to pick out the waste, because they might not want that. They like the freedom that they have. So there's something also to say that, we should not oblige them. Of course, we want to give everyone a better life, and the way they work under the conditions at the landfills in extreme heat, with the methane, with everything else, that is definitely not good. But some people actually do enjoy the freedom that they have in the job that they have. So just a different perspective.
Okay, thank you, Luuk, for that a different side of giving free time or part-time option for informal waste collectors. Okay, and for our next question, I know all of you have projects in the Philippines. So can you share some challenges and successes you experienced, and what you hope the outcomes of these projects will be? Again, I know some of you have projects in the Philippines. Can you share some of the challenges and successes you experienced, and what you hope the outcomes of this project will be? Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to take it first. One of the important things that Hans mentioned during his speech is what we see is that for proper waste management, it doesn't come for free. What we've also seen in the Netherlands and in Western Europe, for that matter, is that if you want to do a proper way of disposal, you need scale, because scale decreases cost. Economies of scale hold in proper waste management or proper waste disposal on a large scale. If you want to properly treat, for instance, flue gases in a waste energy plant, that comes at a cost. So it is important that the government on a higher level than just an LGU is involved. Why? Even in Manila, there's only one LGU that could do a waste energy plant, which is Quezon City, because it has more than 1 million people. If you look at other parts of the country, you would need to gather, maybe on a provincial level, and all the LGUs in some places, in order to do maybe a regional landfill, if that may be sometimes an option, or a regional waste energy plant, or regional material recovery facility. But that requires cooperation between LGUs. I know it's allowed under RA 9003. I know that the PPP Center is an advocate of working together between multiple LGUs. I think that is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And unfortunately, that working together between the LGUs, hopefully they can be stimulated, such that you can do smaller local recycling initiatives, but a proper large scale sink solution or final waste disposal for an island or multiple islands, or even for multiple cities in Metro Manila, would really help and drive things forward.
Okay, thank you, Luuk. How about you, Tarang and Hans?
Well, I don't have experience in the Philippines yet, although I'm starting on a project right now for the Philippines, for the PPP Center in the Philippines, in the province of Catanduanes. And from the information I got until now, I'm very enthusiastic about what is going to happen there, because there the province is taking the helm, bringing municipalities together to cooperate on a shared landfill facility, combined with 2 satellite transfer stations, bringing the waste to the landfill, and also for introducing, although it's quite a small population of something like 300,000 inhabitants, maybe not the scale needed for a waste to energy plant, but still then for, let's say, a composting facility and some recycling, it's a very good scale. And I'm very enthusiastic about, let's say, the position of the provincial authorities there.
Okay, thank you, Hans. And Tarang?
I think look, you said what are the challenges and successes. I think if you shared some successes just by putting our head down and doing it, it does bring in. The challenge will still be because it's an archipelago. And because it's an archipelago, the collection we can't keep building in multiple recycling facilities that we're building. So it will always be a challenge in terms of economics and doing it. At this stage, yeah, we are happy. I think the big island or the Luzon can still cater to enough. But if you have to scale this and thinking about 5-10 years down the line, the archipelago and how would that work is one of the challenges. And I would imagine that's something that we have to crack it together.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So just before we go to the next question, our original program was supposed to end by 5:15. Is it okay to extend 10 minutes for 3 speakers? Okay for Luuk, okay for Hans, Tarang, is it okay? Okay for everyone. So a follow-up question from Hope Carino from Republic Junk, a waste diverter enterprise in Mindanao. So is it possible for obliged companies or large companies to pool funds for informal waste sector to avail in order to meet the labor standards? Again, is it possible for obliged and large companies to pool funds for the informal waste sector to avail in order to meet the labor standards?
I can try answering that question. Look, I think it's important, and some of the countries have started to do that with the industry, which is, and this is my experience in Malaysia, where I was one of the board of members to start PRO, which is called as Packaging Recycling Organization. Now, what's interesting here is that we need to create a constant ecosystem. The critical part is that if you collect, let's say, plastic or packaging waste, is there an end buyer? So if the industries stand up and say that we're going to buy and we are committing to buy, the ecosystem starts falling in place. Recyclers will start coming in. You start having clear contracts and saying that what sort of collection should happen. So it's important to have that ecosystem with the industry coming up and saying that, yeah, we are committed to buy. And then the entire ecosystem starts coming in place. And of course, when the large industries will come in place, they would need to follow the human rights, the basic necessities. I think all of those should be put into the contracts. And then there are, my experience, there are enough investors who would love to invest and make it happen.
Okay, thank you, Tarang. So obliged companies are interested to invest. How about you, Luuk and Hans? Maybe Luuk first, because Hans doesn't have experiences in the Philippines yet.
Yeah, no, for us it's the same. Waste to energy plants are large infrastructure projects. You're looking at now up to 100 million, 150 million US dollars for it to run. At this moment, for a lot of commercial banks in developing countries, that's not yet of interest, or it's new to them. So you're often dealing for now with multilateral investments with IFC, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the Dutch Development Bank, FMO, GIZ, and the likes. And they will always, the first question they ask me, what are you going to do with the informal sector? And there's money for that available. And we work together with them in our environmental and social impact assessment to estimate what is going to happen to the people that may not get a livelihood anymore if the waste doesn't end up on a landfill anymore. And for that, there's often some subsidy programs or grants available. And part of how we would set up our projects is to try to offer them a job in our facility, or we find another way through programs to help them and their families. So with multilaterals, definitely at this stage, there's a lot of interest for this. because of the, hopefully the impact on greenhouse gas emissions and better working circumstances.
Okay, thank you, Luke. Hans, do you want to add, or we can go to the next question?
Well, maybe very short. So no experience here from the Philippines yet, but maybe from other countries that are in the same position. I worked a lot in Myanmar and in general, but also in many other countries around the world. And in general, you can say that all the larger institutions around the world, World Bank, ADB, etc., like Luuk mentioned, they are very much interested in these projects. But the only thing you have to come up with is with a good plan. And of course, the informal sector should be part of that plan. But they are there's no lack of money. There's a lack of good plans. And I think the situation is the same in the Philippines.
Okay, thank you, Hans. So before we end, we just have one comment from Sergey Navarro, soliciting insights from the speaker. Most of the packaging of instant foods tend to use biodegradable, such thing as it turns into microparticles, susceptible for the fish to be eaten or swallowed, in which is harmful to human. In fact, there are reports that there is an incident found in fish. So biomagnification of microplastics in humans.
It's even found in breast milk right now. So we're not, our solution to pollution used to be dilution. Well, it's not a way to solve the problem. So microplastics, organic waste that has been previously mixed and therefore may contain heavy metals, those are all, we should do something else with that than rather try to reuse it and bring it back into our food chain in any other way. So no, it really depends on the constellation. But if I see here the way that waste is collected here in Metro Manila, for instance, or Metro Cebu, it's all collected mixed, and if you want, you can try to recycle it, but it will be expensive. And what comes out, as I often said, garbage in is garbage out. Do we want that? Likely not, because it may have negative indirect effects. So if there's no way to improve the collection or do source segregated collection, then you have to look at other alternatives to safely dispose the waste off, such that it doesn't end up in a negative way affecting the environment down the line.
Okay, thank you, Luuk. Okay, so before we ask our final question to everyone, we would like to share a few reminders. We would like to remind everyone to please stay for a photo opportunity after our final question. And we also request everyone to please help us improve by providing feedback on the event. You may scan the QR code on the screen or click the link my colleagues will place in the chat box. Okay, so the feedback form is shown both in the screen and both in the chat box. So for our last question, everyone, you can end it with a short quote or something. So with time against us in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, what is your call to action for top-level business executives and government officials for a quicker and smoother transition to a circular economy in the Philippines? Again, with time against us in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, what is your call to action for top-level business executives and government officials for a quicker and smoother transition to a circular economy in the Philippines? Who wants to go first?
Well, from my perspective, I think we need more people like Tarang and his company who are really embracing waste management and circular economy aspects. And that's a great way to go, because if you just wait, something will be organized for you and you will not be happy. So my call for executives of companies in the Philippines would be embrace the problem, embrace the solutions, and go for it.
Thank you, Hans. Luuk?
Yeah, let me then focus on the Philippine government. I think the laws that you have are pretty good. RA 903, the EPR law, let's add a few more based on the experience that we have in the Netherlands. And Hans will, I believe, be here early next year. Might be very interesting if through the government of the Netherlands, he can pay a visit to the DENR and several other institutions to discuss, hey, what can you learn from the steps? I mean, the Philippines can definitely leapfrog based on the learnings that we've done, or not make the same mistakes. They'll still have to go through the steps, but learn from the mistakes that we have made in the Netherlands. And Hans has seen many more countries and then can take all these learnings along. And then two things, work together as various LGUs to achieve scale. And number two is waste management doesn't come for free. So the government has to invest in it. Waste to wealth, yes, up to a certain extent, but proper waste management also costs money for the government. Because in the end, you and I, as individual citizens, are not going to be able to solve the problem. Of course, in the Netherlands, we had this nice slogan: "A better environment starts with yourself." So let's all practice it, but we still need the government because unfortunately, not all of us take that little sentence by heart.
Okay, thank you, Luke. Lastly, Tarang.
I think the two experts have said that. All I would say is that have a very strong intent as a leader to do this. Find the intellect that it can create a value for the business and a value for the community and value for the planet. And take that approach. So if you have the intent, find the right intellect. And if we as leaders lead the curve, the advantage is that we would, as businesses, we would be able to do it in the terms that is most beneficial for the business, rather than being told to do what to do. And that's not a great place to be in. So rather have the intent, lead the curve, build what needs to be done, and start piloting it. Some things will succeed, some things you'll pivot, but just keep moving at it. Thank you.
Okay. Again, maraming salamat, Hans, Luke, and Tarang. We hope that this discussion has been valuable to you, as it has been very informative to all of us. And thank you for your time. So before we end, we just want to remind everyone to turn on their cameras so that we can have our group photo. And we will be ending the live Facebook session to accommodate the group photo in Zoom. Okay? So kindly turn on your cameras. So we'll give you 10 seconds to turn on your cameras. And again, saying goodbye to our FB viewers. Thank you for staying. Okay, can we remove the screen? The slide pala, sorry. Okay, so I'll be counting to 3. So we have 42 participants. So I think we have 2 panels. So just hold your smile for twice the time. Okay, so I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay, for the second panel. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay, thank you so much for participating in the photo. Again, thank you for attending our virtual forum, and we hope that you stay safe and to see you again on our next activities. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, everybody.
Maraming salamat. Walang
Thank you,
naman.
everybody.
Thank you.
We hope to see you, Hans, in the
Thank
Philippines
you,
soon.
Tarang. Thank you, Luke, and thank you, Hans.
Thank you. Thank you very
Enjoy.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we'll be closing the Zoom in 10 seconds. Maraming salamat po.
Hello,
Okay.
thank you everyone. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, CE team.
Congrats.
Thank you, Sobra, for the help.
Okay. Yeah, sige. Let's start with our key takeaways. Let's start with Felix first. So Felix, I don't know if you can hear us, but as per Felix, so in terms of the tech, there's a smooth transition. So okay naman tayo, FB and Zoom. Thank you for that. I'll call on